Well, welcome back to What If Wednesday.
It's been a little while.
It's been quite a little while. I think a little longer than we planned.
Yes.
Yes.
But it's all back together now.
It's been quite a year and a half. A lot of changes, and we have a lot of new things to talk about.
Yes, we'll be spending some time. We'll do a lot more What If Wednesdays. And interestingly enough, this first one is very much about, well, why don't you tell them what this first one's about, honey? I know you love doing that.
It's about optimization versus transformation. And this has become a really important subject for us because to truly understand, like, why optimize and why transform and what's the difference? Because I think there's some confusion out there in the world. And this is important for understanding why Body of Nine is important, which is a question we've been getting a lot lately.
Yes, it's very clear that the last year and a half has been spent with doing, for us in Body of Nine, optimizing about Body of Nine and how we teach and what we teach, but also about helping people transform. And we're going to be looking at the very major difference between optimization and transformation. And we'll start by thinking about a caterpillar, because a caterpillar is almost the epitome of transformation rather than optimization.
So let's start with optimization.
Yes.
So optimization is really making yourself a better caterpillar.
Yes.
If we're going to use that analogy.
Yes.
Just becoming a better caterpillar. Eating more caterpillar food and getting out in the world and being a really great caterpillar. And so most of the systems you see out there today are really around optimization. How do I get better at being who I am? How do I know myself better? How do I perform better? How do I have a more fulfilling life as I am in this current moment?
Yes, and one of the differences between us as human beings and caterpillars is that, assuming that caterpillars have some sort of consciousness that they one day will become a butterfly, human beings actually in general don't have the consciousness that there's a lot more than they can actually transform to, other than becoming the much better version of themselves. And so one of the things we want to really go into here is that this is about not just becoming the best you, but becoming a very different kind of you.
Well, and I do believe that all of us, maybe, or some of us deep inside, know there's something more that's possible.
Oh, yes.
Right? That there's more that we could do or become, but we don't know how to get there. And there's this habit in the professional development world of continuing to search for that possibility for something more.
And yes, and the question that I think arises with this statement is that what is more, right? If I get to be 10% faster, I get to be 10% more able to be in love with my wife. If I get to be 20% better than this, have I reached the more? And I think you can keep reaching for the more, and unless you understand that you need to transform to reach the more, not optimize, you're never going to find it.
Right. And so let's start definition of optimization. Getting better at being you. And transformation is about taking a orthogonal change that in some ways comes out of nowhere and creates a situation where you're no longer the same as you were before.
Yes, the you that you started from, just like the butterfly, is not actually completely connected to the you that you are now. Because with transformation, you can get to be perhaps the fastest human being in the world. Supposing you want to run faster and faster and faster and faster, you can optimize and optimize and optimize. But then you realize that actually you want to be able to do the long jump, or you want to be able to play soccer, or any of these things that are actually about you, but aren't about running faster.
I'm not sure I follow that, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Some people follow Martin, some people follow me. So.
Basically, I'll rephrase that. You can optimize to the nth degree. You can always, and one is always, even when transforming, one is optimizing.
Right. But so you're trying to be the fastest human being in the world, and you realize, I can get on a car.
Yes.
And be much faster
Right.
than I can on my feet.
Yes.
So that's a total change, and you're never going to go back to running as fast as you can to get your groceries, right?
Yes.
So how do we change in ways that we don't necessarily imagine are possible for us right now? So, and why is this relevant to Body of Nine? Because this is always about what's relevant to Body of Nine here on the Body of Nine channel. It's relevant because because optimization and transformation is cyclical, goes in a wave. First, you get identified. It's the first thing, that's first transformative experience that you can have with Body of Nine. The act of having your natural number identified turns on something in your body. It creates some kind of connection between body, mind, soul that enables you to now perceive the world in a different way. And that's the beginning of this journey of transformation, optimization, and transformation that Body of Nine offers. And then you start from there to optimize your natural number.
Yes. And one of the things that I want to point out, and Susan mentioned that in passing, is that there is a huge difference between a transformational experience and transformation. Because all of us have had experiences like, wow, that was a complete transformational experience. I don't feel necessarily the same person. Going back to the analogy of perhaps a caterpillar. If a caterpillar gets attacked by a bird and manages to avoid the bird, scuttles under something, wow, I've had a transformational experience. I'm never going to sit on the top of a leaf again. But that caterpillar has not transformed. It has optimized itself within the parameters of being a caterpillar. And the analogy for Body of Nine is, until you've been identified, you don't know what it's like to actually be you. And that is the start. It's an initial transformation to understand who you are. And you get to optimize who you are with a bigger understanding, a small transformation.
And that's what most people do for about 6 months after they find out their natural number.
Exactly.
They go and they read our book and they ask us questions and they read their pearls of wisdom and they join a workshop here or buy one of our products. And then they learn more about it. Then they get more curious, like, why is this important? Yeah. Then they also get curious about their family and their friends and their coworkers and say, well, I'd like to know their natural numbers so I can understand them better and also know myself better by knowing the other 8 natural numbers. So that's part of the optimization process.
It's optimization of your relationships. And you can optimize your relationships, again, by understanding how people are different and understanding how your family is different and understanding how the people around you are different. And it helps you become a lot more able.
At least accepting of others.
Accepting of others.
Appreciating.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do the transformative next step.
Right.
The transformative next step after finding out about all of this is to learn to activate the natural numbers in your body. That's the next transformative step in Body of Nine.
Yeah. And really, unless you can activate all 9 in your body, you can't make what we tend to think of as the evolutionary step into being a more complete human being, to become the butterfly.
Well, at some level, if you want to keep using that analogy, the first thing you do is get identified. So you start to build your chrysalis, right? And you haven't gone in there full on, right?
No,
then you go, but you're going and you're building, you're getting the...
Sounds like an idea.
Yeah, you're eating a lot of eucalyptus leaves in order to have enough energy to build your chrysalis. Then you go in there and you try to activate all 9 natural numbers. Now you can actually expand your perceptive abilities. And that ability to expand perceptive abilities that comes with learning to activate each of the natural numbers is the next big piece of transformation. And actually there are 8 pieces of transformation because there's 8 other natural numbers. So first you learn to activate yourself, then you learn to activate all the other 8 in the body.
And it's kind of an irony, really, that the understanding that there are 9 ways of being, the other 8 that you can access, you have to optimize yourself through those 8 because it is each one. Some are easy, some are less easy, depending on your life experiences, your nature, your nurture. And in our experience, nobody finds all 9 easy and nobody finds all 9 hard. And going back to the chrysalis analogy, it's not as though, as far as we understand it at least, it's not as though the caterpillar walks into its cocoon and suddenly, poof, becomes a butterfly. It has to break itself down to sort of a primordial fluid, an ooze in the middle, that loses all its selfness inside before it can become the butterfly. And the analogy for that in Body of Nine is it's actually quite hard to transform.
Right. And what happens when you begin to first activate each of the natural numbers is you hit up against a wave of information coming into you that your body is not yet equipped to make sense of. And when you are, that can be very overwhelming. And then that happens 8 times. So if you come to a transformational weekend with us and do 2 days of learning to activate the natural numbers, it takes several months to actually integrate that experience after you have come and learned the basics of the activations.
Because it's going to actually reach down inside you and touch all the nurture points that you've experienced through your life.
Right. So it can trigger traumas, exactly. It can trigger good things, bad things, hard things, easy things.
And the great news is we have such a fantastic community of healers and teachers and therapists that have been through this and are really good at helping people move through their trauma, helping people actually optimize within each of the other natural numbers within your body.
Right, if you had a traumatic experience with a person of a particular natural number, that natural number can be very hard for you. And it can re-trigger those traumas that have occurred in your life. So there's personal work that you have to do alongside the transformational work because you're going to hit up against your edges. And if you hit up against those edges and run for the hills, which a lot of people do, and we respect that, you're basically stop the transformation process.
Yes, and you've also stopped the optimization process because
that too.
Other people, what people do sometimes, at least for a while, is they'll decide, okay, I need to go work on something else. I can't handle this part of my own reality right now. And they'll go off and they'll optimize themselves and sometimes they'll come back and be ready for the next level of transformation. However, once you do get to the point of transformation where you have all 9 in your body, everything tends to get quite a lot easier.
It does. It does. But there is actually more after that. It's not like you reach nirvana because you can activate the natural numbers.
I don't want to say that life becomes easier because actually it's a misspaced. Life becomes easier to handle because stuff still happens. They get the phone call because your car needs a puncture repaired, or this happens, or that. Life keeps going.
You have a heart attack.
Yeah.
For example, or your wife has a heart attack.
Yes, exactly.
And that was a big reset for Martin and I. And we had to find a new way to handle through the shift in stage of life where we're at. Yeah. And we very much used our body of 9 skills to get through this.
And we also learned a different way to teach what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Every part of what we do has been changed because the techniques behind driving to optimization became very much better understood sometime 3 or 4 months ago, and we've started teaching that, and it became part of the whole of the transformation process. So we're not randomly spewing out, let's transform because we think it's a great idea. We know how to do it.
Yeah. And we have, we've been studying this for years now, 20-something years for me and 10, 15 for you. Well, you've been a student of this without knowing you were a student of it before. So
it's
our whole life long. Right, exactly. We've been a student of life, and along the way we'd garnered certain information. And I don't know, 10 years or so ago, Martin found this series or sequence that Pythagoras presented in terms of understanding how families get... Well, you explain this.
What Pythagoras was talking about way back when was he discovered that there were really, he thought, 4 kinds of people. And the kind of people that he thought match almost exactly between the 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, and 4, 8. Actually, he called them number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, whatever the Greek used for those 4 things. And then, of course, there's 9, which is the whole. He was aware of that as well. The difference then, when it boils down to it, in almost a simplistic way, is that 1 and 5 are very similar. But 1 is relationship first, 5, process. 2, relationship first, 6, process. 3, relationship first, 7, process. 4, relationship first, 8, process, body-based. So the pairings, 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, 4, 8, are very, very obvious if you put them into buckets, relationship and then non-relationship.
Well, don't say non-relationship, transformation.
Transformation, yes.
Or,
transformation is a good word,
yeah, it is.
Non-relationship is not accurate. So once we understand 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a relatively easy number, easy sequence to follow, then by using the 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, 4, 8, and 9 sequence, we can teach people how to identify. We can teach people how to build better relationships.
Well, it's actually much more profound.
Oh, exactly. Everything.
It is the sequence for transformation.
Everything.
You must go through the 9 steps in that order in order to truly transform, is our hypothesis.
And our experience so far in using that sequence, it has turned out to be very, very powerful.
Very powerful. And you have to finish the whole thing.
Yes.
If you don't finish the whole thing, things get really wonky.
Yes, really wonky.
Really wonky.
And it all starts with number one. It all starts with honouring. It all starts with being with the person you're with. It all starts from source, from nature, whatever your word is, from the place of starting, and it ends with 9, which is the circle. 1 and 9 next to each other.
So let's walk through the whole thing.
Let's go.
So I think talk about 1 and 5 again. Just start with 1 and 5.
So 1 and 5 is the beginning point. 1 is starting to admit that we have something to change. It's starting to connect to the creativity. It's starting to, in many ways, in many languages, in many systems, asking for help from the higher power. And it's
also honouring.
And honouring ourselves, honouring the process. And then it's about 5, which is, what do we need to learn? Let's look at the framework. What's the big picture? What's the map of where we want to go here? Putting it all together and holding it in a place where there is space to change.
Right. So 1 and 5 is the starting place where we build the deep connection from a place of our entry point as humans.
Yeah.
And we understand what we know, what we don't, and we have a sense of where to go from there. So we have the connection and we have the understanding. Then we move on to 2 and 6. And 2 and 6 are both about movement. We need to start doing something. You need to start, now that you know where you are, you need to start getting some more information, going out, moving. So like if you liken this to the identification process, first when we get together as a community, we tell people about Body of 9 and we connect with them. Then we get up on the mat and we stand there and we push on people. Or if we're doing it online, we ask them to start to move.
We build relationship.
And we build a much more dynamic relationship that you create with natural number 2. How do we move and stay together? And in that engagement, learn something new together.
How are things connected together? What is the entity that is created by you and this other thing?
And you also are moving consciously on a pathway. So it's not just movement for the sake of movement. It's movement to say, okay, what's alive? What's vibrating here? What makes sense?
And it's manifestation of energy. It is the intention of getting something moving.
Yes, so that we can see what's going to happen.
And 6 then runs straight into 3, which is about focusing the intention and making it even more real. It's knowing what has to change. It's that excitement, that intention, that...
It's also digging into detail.
Yeah.
So it's how do I focus in now to look to see what are the specific things I'm looking for.
And the inspiration to have the courage and the wisdom to move forward.
It's also deepening the connection to that soul level purpose. Yeah. And then you bring in 7 and you make sure you looked at all the details. Have you thrown out the things that aren't useful?
Are we doing our best?
Are we doing our best? Is this good for the world and is it good for me?
Does it have purpose?
Does it have purpose? And so you bring those 2, 3, and 7 together and you get pretty clear on what's actually there.
And you're ready to change.
And then we move on to 4 and 8, which is how do I ground this in the body? How do I ground it authentically in my body so that I know it, I know myself in the place, and I know what to do.
And while remaining and growing your connection to every living thing.
Yes, and each other.
And each other. And then moving
at the life force level.
Exactly.
Yes.
And moving into making it real in the body and manifesting with trustworthiness and safety.
Yes. And if you look at the identification process, after you begin to do things, you move into the 3-7 and you try some specific things to see what works. And then once you know what's working, what it is, then you can go and actually help it land in that person's body. So you activate it in your own body to strengthen it in theirs. You challenge them in their natural number posture. These are all things that are part of the identification process that are very, give you a good example of the transformation process. And then
takes you to 9.
To 9.
9 is the integration. It is the start and the stop or the restart of the cycle, the circle. You can start again on your transformation of the next thing. And also you make sure that everyone's included.
But you have to bring it to closure. You have to integrate it and bring it to closure before you can release it back out to create again.
Or you bring it to its stopping point and restart it, depending on whether what is you're doing next. Because everything's a cycle. Everything keeps cycling.
Yeah, and what do we do when we identify? Well, if we're all together, we sit back down and say, well, what did we just do?
Right.
And what does it mean? What does it mean for you as an individual? What does it mean for you as a couple or a family? And we explain what you just learned. And then we let people go for a while to integrate their experience.
Yep. And then they restart back in coming back to be the identification or the activation of the next natural number of all natural numbers.
Right. And so that's why Body of 9, the identification experience is a transformation.
Yep.
because we bring you through that transformation process. And when you are done with that event, you are not the same person.
No.
Whether you take it in and work with it is up to you. So do you now optimize it? I found out my natural number. What do I do next? Well, you've got to optimize, begin that optimization process by understanding the difference between your nature and your nurture, so that you can begin to use your nature, what's naturally your strengths and power and way of being, for whatever purpose you have within you. So it's very much a personal journey in the beginning.
And just as the caterpillar to butterfly, it's a physical process.
Right, and you can't rush it.
No. Everything has its time, and everything has its purpose, and whatever time is your time. And because it's physical, the more you practice,
The more you practice, the more you explore, the more you understand, the more you work in community with others, the faster you will learn.
so if you thought there was more, and have tried and tried and tried to do your best to learn more, you've done a great job of optimization. Congratulations. Come join us to now transform.
Yep, because it sure is fun. Thanks for being here. We'll be back again soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.